anyways, let's move on to Zoom call. I didn't realize I would talk this much about phone calls, but for Zoom calls, oh man, I love FaceTime calls. You get to read their lips, but when it's in the work settings, thank goodness the Teams app exists because it has the live captions. Thank you, Microsoft. There are some other apps that has captions, but they don't have, you have to go through some hoops to get it. The Teams is right there. You just put in these settings and turn on live captions. It made my work life so much easier. But there are some cases where clients or consultants use Zoom app, which doesn't really have captions. That was hard. And I had to ask someone who is in that room to help me on some of the things. Like when they asked me a question and I missed it, and they're like, Taylor, I asked you a question. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. What were you trying to say? I have a lot of those. And sometimes it can be a little embarrassing, but I just learned how to put it aside and say, hey, I'm sorry. I'm hard of hearing. I'm going to miss some things, but I'll send a recap, So what helps me with meetings is that every time at the end of the meeting, I'll recap what we talked about and what we need to do moving forward. So that's one of the helpful things that I find when working with Zoom calls and Teams. And plus, it's always good to recap. You might forget something or something new popped up. Oh, by the way, can you do this for me? I'll be like, okay, I'll write on the list. But yeah. Let's see. I know I mentioned one story about Zoom call about COVID, and I want people to say it one at a time and let everything mute, but one person talking. That is super helpful. Please don't be the person who has a busy background. Nobody wants to hear that. And then agenda. Yes. This is something that I find helpful, is that before a meeting, I usually send an agenda, or if someone set up the meeting, I'll ask for one. It just helps me keep track of what topic we're on. And of course, you can't do that with family and friends, but you can annoy them with questions and ask them to repeat. But the agenda, I find that really helpful. Yeah. So that's what I got for phone and Zoom calls. So I have some tips written down. Just got that inspiration hit today at work. I was like, oh, I should talk about this. So here are tips for people with cochlear implant or who are hard of hearing. The first one is to breathe. Oh my gosh. I understand the anxiety of it. You tend to be really hard on ourselves. Like I tend to be really hard on myself. Because if I don't hear one word or one full sentence, I'll be like, I suck. Dang it, I'm never gonna be good at phone calls. But you just gotta breathe and try again. Just put aside all that negativity that you put on yourself and just keep trying. Don't let one phone call stop you from calling other people. I mean, there are some periods of time where I ignore phone calls on purpose because I'm not in a mood to go through that. It's like going with a group of friends, 6 people, and you're just not in a mood unless there's food involved. Sure, I'll do it, but over the phone call, it just depends. But yeah, just breathe and keep trying. It's so worth it, because when I moved to Charlotte, I miss all of my friends from college. We're all spread out, and it's so nice to FaceTime and catch up. And Danny and I, my best friend Danny and I, we love to watch movies and eat dinner. So we still do that, and we don't have to chat. We just watched a movie over FaceTime, and it was really nice. Have a notepad and a pen. I find that helpful when, when they say when you're trying to say something, you take notes. I find it helpful. I mean, for some people, you don't really need to. But for work, I definitely find that helpful. You don't want to miss any important information. Yeah. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Maybe you won't ask a stranger to take the phone call for you, but that was an important phone call, okay? But don't be afraid to ask for help. It's okay. Yeah, I know I said many other videos. I'm not going to give you another lecture why you should ask for help. Yeah, don't be afraid. Oh yeah. Every phone call, when you ask someone to repeat for you so many times, say thank you. Say thank you. Don't be afraid to say, look, I'm sorry, I have to ask you to repeat. I am hard of hearing, and I have a difficult time with phone calls. And I just want to say I thank you for your patience. Please repeat that. And I say that almost every phone call, and they tend to be like, oh, okay. Can you hear me? Like, they will help. They will change little things, or they'll say, oh, let me try something. And they'll change a setting or do whatever to help me hear, which is really nice. Just don't be afraid to admit that you can't hear over the phone call. And plus, not only hard of hearing people, other people, my family, they will do that. They'll be like, hey, I can't hear you. Can you do something about that background noise or whatever? Yeah. And then tips for people, how they can help. Repeat, be patient with them. If they turn to you for help, please help. Just keep in mind, they are freaking out when they ask you. They're like, please help me, please. Because it takes a lot for someone to ask for help, especially when you have an important phone call and you're like, please help me, please. And it's like with restaurants. Gosh, when you're ordering the food, I always make sure that I read, when they have hidden sentence, what it comes with, I make sure I read it so I can say the whole order so they don't have to ask me any questions. When they ask me a question, I'll tend to freak out a little bit or turn to mom or turn to my friend for help. I was like, what did he say? Yeah, especially with COVID, with the mask. Sometimes I wish someone would order it for me, but I tend to like DoorDash or online orders a lot because I don't have to deal with communication as much. But yeah. And make them feel, the last tip was to make them feel included. There are some Bible studies or friends over phone calls or FaceTime, like Zoom call, and I'm not going to speak up. I don't want to sound selfish. But if you know someone who is hard of hearing over Zoom call, make them feel included. Just say, hey, this person said this. Or, hey, Taylor, what do you think of this? Because it's so easy. Every Zoom call that I have with friends, and I tend to fade into the wall and not talk with anybody. It's like talking with group of friends, group of 6 people, or talk with, even with a couple people. Yeah, even with a couple people, I just thought of a time where I went to church with this sweet guy, and he included me in the conversations, which I really appreciate because it was so hard to hear in that church. I was like freaking out, and I just, part of me wanted to leave, and which is really sad because I love going to church. I love worship songs, but the acoustics was bouncing off like crazy. And when we were having conversation, I just starting to feel really left out. And he included me in the conversations. And I was like, oh, that's what we're talking about, the topic. And it makes me feel better. I was like, okay, I am part of the conversation. It's so easy to be, to make yourself invisible. But it would be great to include them. Yeah. That's all I got. And I hope these are helpful. And wow, that's 25-minute video. Guess I'm going to have to break it up. But they're good stuff. They're important stuff. So, y'all have a good day. Bye. Hey peeps, I am so excited. I admit your color is the best. Exactly. That's the hair color.
Yeah.
But the best hair overall always look good. That's me.
You don't even have a beard. I have a hair you can't even have.
That's all you have to do is share, comment, and like, and it'll be so much fun.